Historical Society. My name is Linda Waite, and it is Friday, November 1st, 2019, and we are here at the Sevastopol Town Hall. And our guest today is Mrs. Dorothy Leist, who has been a longtime resident here in the Sevastopol community. And Dorothy is going to tell us a little bit about growing up, and then we're going to talk about the life of the farmer's wife. So Dorothy, thank you for coming and visiting with us today. Let's see if we can get some background from you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your younger days, your mother and father, their occupations. What did you do during your childhood?
Well, I attended St. Peter and Paul's School for the 8th grade, and I have been a member of Sevastopol all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was the last of 7 children, one boy and 6 girls. 3 of them married and were on farms, and the other lived in Sturgeon Bay, So we were always back and forth and kind of communicating what we were doing, and well, all I could tell them was I milked cows and and worked in the field, picked stones, whatever came up, well, I helped with it. And many times I milked the cows alone because John was in the field. And in thrashing time, of course, he was thrashing. And well, when the combines came out, well, that didn't stop either. That when it was nice weather, it had to keep going because we always planted plenty of grain. And now, at the present time, we don't have any animals on the farm, all but my cat. And, well, I'm still busy because I cut all the lawn, and I'm 93 years old.
Good for you. Okay, going back to your childhood then, Dorothy. So what was your maiden name?
Bocek.
Bocek. Okay, so Bocek's also a Sevastopol community,
Right.
well-known name here in the Sevastopol community. And how did you connect with your husband then, John Leist? What year was that?
He worked for my dad.
He did, okay, on the farm?
On the farm. And then once he went to another place and he worked, but he came back. He didn't like the place there. So, and in the winter, he worked for his dad. They had the lumber place in Velmy.
Okay.
Emil Leist. And he helped him saw logs. And he was a carpenter. So in the winter, he was busy, and that helped us because at that time, well, the wage was very poor. Yes.
Was this during the Depression years then, in the 1930s or late 1930s?
That's how he run for supervisor. And then after, well, when he got into that, well, then he knew all the guys, and then he thought, well, he'll go a little further yet, you know.
So you met, well, he was a hired hand on your parents' farm.
Mostly it was after we were married.
Oh, after you were married.
Yeah.
So where did you meet?
In that time, the weddings were right on the farm. Right in my home, yeah. And the big doing of the dance was at Institute.
Of course,
So,
like many others in that day.
Right. So, but we stayed right on the farm. We had that time a cherry orchard. And, well, it kept us busy. And then I had my children. I had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. So, and they all learned to work. So, I don't know, then when Ed took the farm over, of course, he's got 8 children, and they all learned to be farmers. But now after the cattle were gone, well, they had to find some different business, you know.
Separate ways.
The oldest boy, of course, is electrician now. They all went to school, to college. I often wondered how he could make it, that the 8 children all got good college education. And the second boy is a painter and carpenter. And of course, they are the modern
The modern day drifters.
Modern day
I know them
drifters.
very well, yes.
They put an awful lot of time in their music. Of course, they take after, on the boat check side too. I sang in church choir for years and years, and John too. So they follow kind of in our footsteps.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Carry on the
Oh.
tradition, the musical
Yeah.
tradition.
So-
So when you and John were married, like you said, you had your wedding ceremony on the farm. Then you moved into the farmhouse, and I believe we have a picture of the farmhouse here. So you and John moved into the farmhouse.
My folks lived right with us.
Your folks
Oh,
lived with.
yeah.
Now, did any of your other siblings live on the farm at that time, or was it just your parents and you and John?
It was just us, yeah.
Okay.
But we had a small house on the south side of this, down a little way. And my grandpa and grandma lived in that little house, because they were more connected with the farm. And when grandpa died, then my mother said to grandma, "You can't be alone." So she came and moved up into our house. So, and she was there till she died.
So you had a full house
Oh,
most
yeah.
of the time?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, as you indicated, there's always lots of work to do on the farm, and of course, you have to make hay when the sun shines. So we have some pictures here, which we will definitely scan in. And so let's talk about some of the chores on the farm as we get into the life of a farmer's wife. So, what was your job? Did you have to go out into the barn and help John with the
oh yeah,
milking?
I always milked.
Always milked?
Always milked,
Okay.
yeah.
And do you remember how many cows perhaps you
Well,
started off with?
at the beginning, we didn't have that many.
Like a
But then
dozen, maybe?
as we put pipeline in and grading
Right.
milk, we made, where the old trashing floor was, we put that into a barn. And there was room for 10 more cows in there. And for young stock, of course.
Sure.
And wherever John had to work in the field, well, I always helped him.
Were you a tractor driver and
Oh, yeah.
equipment operator, and
In
you were
haying,
right in there with him,
oh yeah,
right?
in haying time, I was the one on the tractor with the baler.
So was I.
Yeah.
I was the tractor
Yeah.
driver as well.
The boys would say, "Grandma, can you help?" At last, I couldn't get up on the tractor, so I bought me a little two-step ladder.
And carried that with you in order to
And I'd
get
get
up
up
onto
on the
the tractor
on
seat?
tractor, and then they'd move the ladder away. And I didn't get off until nighttime.
I always thought driving tractor was the easiest job, except when you had to go downhill.
But it got
Then you always
tiring
had to ride the breaker.
when you was
Right.
doing it every day and every day, Yeah.
Right.
But I drove tractor till I was 88 years old.
Good for you. Now, when you were baling or threshing or corn chopping, I know on our farm, my mom would have to make a big meal for all of the hired hands.
Oh, yes.
And there was usually a lunch, and then there was a dinner, and then there was a supper. So I know she spent a lot of time in the kitchen, but it sounds like you spent most of your time
Well-
out in the field. Was your mom and dad, or
My
your
mom did a
in-law-
lot of the cooking.
And
because
baking?
sometime I went even one time out, we were short of men, and I fed the trash machine. So,
by hand, right?
yeah, you had to have
Up
that
on
old
the
fork
wagon?
in the hand, and put those bundles in just right.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but I mean, my dad was one. He worked till he just couldn't no more. He liked to be out. Yeah. And then when I had my little ones, well, sometime he watched one of the little ones when I had to go
Sure.
see it. So we always worked good together.
You
Yes.
were a good team.
Yeah.
For how many years?
All my life
And that's how many years?
until John passed away 31 years ago.
So
my
you were
John.
married for how many years?
We were married
Married.
43 years
All right.
before he died. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Now, so you had the dairy farm. Did you have any other livestock on there? Like I know a lot of farmers in the day, you said you had an orchard. So that was sort of like a little supplemental income if
Well,
you
it-
had
But then
cherries.
one winter, we had so much snow, and it broke the limbs down on the cherry trees. So that was the end of it. We pulled them all out.
What about chickens? I know a lot of farmers
Well,
would sell chicken.
I
or
didn't
sell
bother with
eggs.
chickens,
No,
no.
you didn't like chickens, or?
No, it was but if you remember Mrs. Beery,
I do, yes.
well, when she called her chickens, I'd always get about 20 chickens, and they went in my freezer.
Oh. So when you had chickens, they were already packaged.
Well,
and-
they were and my mother, though, before, when I was younger, she raised chickens, some, yeah. But I didn't bother with chickens. No, that wasn't for me.
Well, we both know that farming is a lot of work. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
rarely get any days off, and you rarely take a vacation. Did you and your husband get to take any vacations?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
We had a cousin up in Canada that was going to have their golden wedding. So that's when the Geisels and John and I went to.
Right.
Yeah. And once before, we took our car and we went up there because we started in Winnipeg and went right across country. Because
To the
last
west.
one was living only 11 miles from the Montana border.
okay,
So we've seen all the different country,
sure.
And that John liked because it was mostly farmers.
And it was mostly grain fields, I
Yeah.
think, Saskatchewan
And it was a nice
Montana.
time. They were combining.
Ah.
Oh, and that he liked, yeah. Otherwise, he didn't care about in the city,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so, and then the children came along. So you had, how many children did you say?
Four children,
Four
two
children.
boys and two girls, yeah.
Okay, and they helped on the farm as well?
They did.
When they first started
They did.
out?
Well, they each had their work, yeah.
Their assignments?
And the girls too. And if I went in the barn, well, they cleaned up the table and stuff in the evening and did whatever little chores there was to be in the house. Because we didn't have electricity on the farm until the year I got married.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had the hand pump and the outdoor
We had
bathroom and
Right,
the outhouse in the
right.
back 40, or?
And I don't know, we didn't have a telephone until a lot later than that yet. If you needed a vet or something, we had to go to Velmy and use the phone there,
Sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Okay. So we started off bare bones, and then we got all these luxuries down the line there, electricity and a telephone and a
Yeah, well,
modern car and a modern tractor. I'm looking at a picture here. You indicate that is you and John,
that's an old
on-
Fordson tractor.
an old Fordson. Okay, is that
A
before
good many-
the Ferguson?
Good many times, you can see where he cranked.
Okay.
He'd crank
So-
it and crank it, and then that
Right,
last
and then-
maybe it would go,
Okay, did
Yeah.
it have rubber tires or steel tires?
It was like a rubber tire.
Okay, because I can remember a tractor on our farm, I think it came with the farm, and it actually had steel tires. So you had this picture of you and John, and then, this is one of the grandchildren, correct?
That's Ed's oldest boy, the one that's got kind of the band in his name.
Right,
Yeah.
and so they had a picture, their couple picture with that same tractor, right?
And
And probably about 50 years later?
that was, no, that is his intended. He's
Right,
to be
his-
married next September,
Yep.
and she's from Green Bay.
This is Brian, right? Is
That's
this
Brian.
Yep.
Yeah.
mhm.
And her name
were
is
gonna turn it around,
Tricia
so-
Martin
Tricia Martin. And they have a wedding date set for next
for
year.
next September.
I think I just saw their engagement in the
Yeah.
paper.
It was in the paper.
Okay.
And he wanted it to have the picture like when we were, John and I, on the tractor.
Sure. So, yeah,
Yeah,
this,
see?
the similar picture. And we have another picture here, and I'm gonna turn this around so that our cameraman can see it. I don't think is that the Ford Ferguson, or that is with the combine, correct?
No, that was
Or
a
the thrashing
case.
machine. Oh, that
big
was a
yeah.
case. Okay.
And that's when we were
With the
shipping the
thrashing.
milk cans, yeah.
Right, and in those days, you put the milk into the milk can, right? You put it in a big tank with cold water
Yeah.
until the milkman came to pick them up.
Right.
And then he would bring the empty cans back the next day.
Oh, yeah.
So that was before you put in your pipeline milking
We didn't have pipeline then.
You didn't
No.
have pipeline then? No, absolutely not. So, all right. And then we talked about this thrashing machine, and if you want to explain what these are.
They're shocks.
They're shocks, right?
Grain shocks. And we mostly did that in the evening because, well, it was pretty hot, and you lifted those all the time and shook them down, so they stayed.
Right.
Because if a wind came, well, they were laying over, and you wanted them to get dry.
Right.
See? Yeah.
So then you put them up into, I always thought they looked like little teepees. So the grain binder would come along,
Yeah.
grab a bunch of grain, put a binder twine around
Right.
them, and then we would have to come and put them into our little
Put 'em in
teepees
shocks.
so they would dry.
Right.
And so this was the old-fashioned way, this was the new-fashioned way, right?
that's
With
right.
the-
Yeah.
With the combine.
Yeah. Well, this too.
Well, one
because-
machine did everything for us.
Well, that was so much better. Oh, my.
Less work.
Yeah.
Right. So the combine would come and pick the grain heads off, and then the combine would just put them into the pickup truck.
Well, the
And
second
here-
combine, we bought from Russell Fellover when they quit. You know Russell,
I do,
Yeah.
yes. So you had two combines?
2 combines.
Well, you were pretty prosperous farmers
Well,
then.
we always, this year, I know he had over 100 acres of oats beside the wheat.
Mm-hmm.
And now the beans are in the field yet,
The soybeans?
soybeans.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's because it's so wet, it's hard to
Yeah.
get the machinery in
And
there.
they're not ripening the
Right.
way they should.
All right, and this is your herd of cattle. I see a date on here of October of 1967. So
And
that's
they,
not
we had those
Holsteins. Mm-hmm.
across the road toward the swamp, because our land, it was got swamp on the
Sure.
west side, yeah.
Right.
And we had a dog at that time, and she would bring the cows home.
By yourself?
Yeah.
So
All you
Laddie,
need
run
to
out
do
and
is
get
say,
the cows.
it's time for the cows to get milk. And away she went. All you do was open the gate,
And the cows would come home.
and they had to stay in line because she
That's
was a very
right.
smart dog. Yeah.
I was always amazed at cows knew
Oh, yeah.
what stanchion to go into as well.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned a little bit about John, your husband.
Yes.
And you said that he took an interest in county politics. So we're looking at a certificate of election from April of 1970, where John Leist was elected to the County Board of Supervisors in Door County. So do you recall any instances where he would come home and say, well, the county board dealt with this today, or?
Well, it got to be a little too much for him. With meetings and then people were calling on the phone,
Oh, sure.
how that works. And, well, really the county board was better than,
Then
the
town.
Sevastopol
Okay.
people were always needing something or doing something.
Well, sure, and you said he was elected to the Sevastopol Town Board then too? So he was on the Door County Board of Supervisors?
He was on the Door County board.
And was he also on the Sevastopol Town Board?
Well, I don't know just how it all was, but when he got into it, he said, I want to run, I think, for
problem with my voice because my voice is 88 years old, so. And I'm having a little problem with my hearing with water in the tube, so you'll have to bear with me. I know everyone has a story to tell, and this may be an unusual one, but it is one that hasn't been heard before. And this story happened many years ago. It is likely in stark contrast to today's standard of living. However, I think difficulties in life help to build character, and it makes one a stronger person. And so I'm not really a speaker, but I can read. Growing up in the Depression years, when I was born in 1931, the Depression was well on its way. My family was a farming family going back to the mid-1850s in Wisconsin. Our farm was 1 mile south of the village of Institute on what now is known as Country View Road. Many of the farms in the neighborhood were owned or mortgaged by the Federal Land Bank. Local banks didn't necessarily loan money to farmers, so the farm, with much hard work, provided a bare living. There never was much cash available, but at least farm people could feed their family. Things were harder in the cities where many people depended on the government to feed them. It was hard work on the farm, mostly physical. I don't remember any overweight farmers. I never thought we were poor, but our way of living was very frugal. And all our neighbors were in the same position. Some had more and some had less than our family did. As a child, I was happy in accepting things as they were. After all, I lived in a beautiful area with fields and woods to explore and enjoy, and I had a favorite dog who was always with me. He was a cow dog, and I was a cowgirl. In the summer, we walked through the woods, following the cow paths, taking cows to different pastures. I had many chores to do each day. I helped to carry in water after hand pumping the pails full for drinking, cooking, and washing clothes. It was my job to carry in wood for the cast iron cook stove and to keep the wood box filled. I helped in the kitchen, setting the table, getting in fresh milk each day as my dad milked cows by hand. I would take the milk pail to the pump and put it in a bucket of cold water to cool it immediately. When I was in 8th grade, age 14, we finally got electricity in the house, and we were able to have running water, as we called it. The first 18 years of my life, we had no bathroom in the house and no phone. It was kind of quiet. I loved the freedom I had during the summer months. I got to roam all over the outdoors, enjoying the sunshine, the clouds, the wind, and the rain. It was very precious. I loved it all, and it has to this day been a part of my soul. Every farm had its own orchards. I had my favorite trees, yellow transparent in the spring, summer apples that had no name, the crab and the snow apples in the fall. I loved climbing trees, and no one ever told me to be careful. That was a lesson one learned quickly. Most of the life's lessons on the farm were learned and not told. Because work on the farm was an important part of life, a strong work ethic was very early established. And because it had to be done, it was an accepted part of life. I never minded the smaller jobs for a younger child. One was taking care of the chickens, the feeding, watering, gathering eggs from the nests, cleaning the nests, the carrying in of the wood, hand pumping water from the well, keeping the stove reservoirs filled, and the cleaning and filling of the kerosene lamps. Used a newspaper for that lamp shade, and you had to be very careful that you didn't break it. School was a pleasure for me. I attended Sevastopol School for 12 years. I saw my teachers as knowledgeable adults, and I wasn't. I looked up to them with respect. They were leaders, and I felt I was there to learn from them. And we had a teacher, Mrs. Miller, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And before we started the class in the morning, we had a 15-minute session. She would write something on the board like, honesty is the best policy. And then we discussed that for 15 minutes, so we had a good start for the day. And the best part of the school was access to the small library. I read every book I could get my hands on during the school year. I remember reading my favorites over and over, and in 3rd grade, I was recognized for reading 100 books, a star for everyone. Though we had no books at home, we did get a newspaper, the Milwaukee Journal. In spite of the fact my dad only attended school until the 3rd day, he loved that newspaper. Excuse me. We had a country store 1 mile away, was the Joe Strand store at Institute. Many times I walked a half a mile of gravel road and a half a mile of the Highway 57 to Institute to get my mother a nickel's worth of yeast to make bread. Other items that were bought were the flour, sugar, and coffee, and not much else. After all, we had our own meat, beef from the cows, pork, ham, and bacon. Every farmer had a lot of pigs, milk and eggs and vegetables from the garden. Everyone's wardrobe was minimalistic. As a child, I had 1 pair of shoes for the school year and barefoot for the summer. It wasn't hard to pick what dress to wear when it was natural to pick the clean one. Brown cotton stockings in cooler weather, held up with a garter belt, maybe a sweater, and a wool jacket for winter. A pair of galoshes, rubber boots, to wear over shoes in the winter. And that is why the closets in the old houses were very small. You didn't have much to put in them. Okay, in the summertime, cotton blouses and a pair of overalls were worn, which was very cool to wear, cool weather-wise. It was a time when no one had health insurance. Doctors would come to your house if really needed. Otherwise, there was Vaseline for cuts and bruises. And I remember one time when I had cancer sores in my mouth, my dad took me to see the doctor, who was Dr. Mulhauser from a long time ago, and he checked me out and he prescribed vitamin B1. And then my dad said, "How much, Doc?" And Dr. Mulhauser said, 50 cents. My dad paid him, and the doctor put it in his pocket. No secretary, no bookwork. How simple. No paperwork. Food was very basic. Breakfast, oatmeal with a hunk of sausage, sometimes pancakes, sometimes eggs and fried potatoes, and of course, bacon. Milk was a beverage for kids. Adults had coffee. Dinner was at noon. Meat was the main item. Beef roast, pork roast, chops, potatoes, always potatoes, boiled and sometimes mashed. Gravy, of course, vegetables in season from the garden. Bread was served at every meal, and lots of home churned butter. which I had turned the churn, and then you turned it this way. Have you ever had a slice of fresh bread from the oven with lots of butter and topped with brown sugar? What a treat. There was also soup with homemade noodles. My mother would roll out the dough till it was very thin and then hang them over the back of the chair to dry. She made cakes and pies. At times there wasn't as much, but no one went hungry. On Monday, which was wash day, we always had boiled navy beans with pork hocks served with potatoes and sauerkraut. Of course, German people had a lot of sauerkraut. Supper was an evening meal, whatever was left over from dinner or a hunk of bread and sausage. There was no box food or processed food, no cereal boxes because we really didn't have cereal until the war years, Second World War. Nothing out of a can. We carried our lunch to school. Early days it was in a syrup pail that had a handle. We made use of what was available. There were days when not much food was available, and that's when homemade bread had lard on it. Lard sandwiches. The lard was bacon grease with bits of brown in it. Have you ever fried bacon and dipped a piece of bread in it? Not bad. And to think I never complained what was in the bucket. When you are really hungry, just about anything tastes good. It would never pass in today's world with today's kids. Town was 7 miles away, and usually we would go once a week. Church was 4 miles away. It was St. John's Lutheran Church at Valmy. And I remember going to Sunday school and learning the Bible stories. As a small child, I would kneel by my bed to say my prayers. The wood floor was a bit hard. Many nights, my mother would tell me stories. Many were from the grim fairy tales, as I found out later. If there were no books, there was always a good memory of storytelling to pass on. Not read me a book, but tell me a story. For Christmas, I would receive a doll once in a while. There weren't many presents. We had a Christmas tree every year until I was 12. That fall, my brother, who was 15 years old, was killed in a farm accident. It was a sorrowful time, especially with my older brother, who was gone to the Second World War. There was no such thing as a birthday party when I was growing up. In fact, I had my first birthday party when I reached the age of 70. I really can't say I ever missed them. However, my aunt in Chicago, who was my baptismal sponsor, would send me $1 each year. I didn't always get to keep it, as one year it went to buy a bag of flour. That way all my family could benefit from it.
behalf of the Sevastopol Historical Society, my name is Linda Waite, and it is Thursday, August 28th, 2024, here at the Sevastopol Town Hall and Institute. Our guest today is Shirley Geisel, a longtime resident of the Sevastopol community, and Shirley is going to tell us her story about growing up on the farm and get into the life of the farmer's wife. So Shirley, welcome, and thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. So I would like to just start out with, if you can tell us how, when, where, and why you ended up on your farm in Sevastopol, starting with whatever year you initiated the farm, if you just want to take it from there, and we'll listen to your story.
Well, I grew up in Medford. My father bought a farm when I was about 2 years old. He came back from war. And I just have many memories of growing up on the farm there. After graduation in '61, I came to Door County, and the reason I came here was my parents would come for a day and pick cherries for their own use and go back home. And I came up here to get a job. I worked at Sturgeon Bay Savings and Loan, and eventually I met my husband, Bernie, and in '65 we were married, and he was a farmer, and after a year of marriage, he said, I think it's time you come home from the savings and loan and help with the field work and farm work. And so that's where I began my life.
Your life as the farmer's wife. Okay,
Right.
and I know you see that you do have some pictures here. We will zoom in on these a little later, but like you said, you met Bernie in or about 1965, and love at first sight, and the rest is history, as they say. Some childhood photos. Okay, so your farm, Shirley, is on Brower Road, where you are still today, correct?
Yes.
So how many acres did you start out with? How many, I assume you were milking. Give us a little background on that, and what was your role? Let's say before the kids came on board, what was your role on the farm?
Well, I think we had, the main farm was 160 acres, and we acquired more land through the years. And I think at present we're over 500 acres. But my first role was doing some field work and milking cows, which at home I didn't do much of that when I was in high school, but I acquired the job of milking, and so then.
And this was before the days of the pipeline milking
It
parlors,
was.
correct?
It
This
was,
was with machines and the overhead air pressure and all that, right?
4 surge buckets.
Yes, the milk
and you
pails.
had- Right, you had to milk them, wash them every day.
Right.
Oh, yes. I enjoyed the milking. We milked, I don't know how many cows at the time. We started around 30 cows, and eventually we got up to about 75 head.
Okay.
And so back in 2017, we went to robotic milking. And that changed our lifestyle.
Right.
The reason, because we mainly ran the farm as a family operation. And so it took care of a lot of extra work.
Can I ask how many cows you are milking now? Are you still milking?
We're milking 65
Okay.
because that's what a robot can handle during a 24-hour period.
Okay. Twice a day, 3 times a day?
Some cows milk 3 times a day. They're on their own. They walk in and milk whenever they want to.
So it's free stall, they can come and go as they please?
Come and go as they
Hang
please.
out with their buddies out in the pasture, which is an advantage to having a smaller herd, is they actually do get outside then and.
No, they don't.
Oh, they do not get
They're
outside.
all
Okay,
confined
they're-
in
okay.
the area. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, and then you said you also helped out in the fields as well, so driving tractor, baling hay, unloading, what did that all entail?
Well, we did a lot. We baled hay.
Yeah, feel free to hold up your
We have
pictures there.
some 8 loads of hay in one day that was baled. Of course, there's picking stones.
Always picking stones, yes. They
That
don't
was a
disappear.
family. That was a family operation, and we have an outdoor furnace. So I helped Bernie at one time cut wood, old
Sure.
trees in our back 80. So, and besides the farm work and that, yes, there was plenty to do.
A lot to do. Okay, so eventually your family came along, and like you said, it was a family affair running the farm. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your children and how they helped once they were able to help you on the farm?
Well, we had 5 children. Our first one was born in 1967, I believe she was. And milking cows was a challenge then because we did not have communication to the house and
Sure,
that. So it
right.
was, you milk for about 10 minutes and run up to see if she was awake, listen in the window and run back down. And eventually we had 4 children, 4 daughters. Jody was the oldest, and then there was Jamie and Heidi and our son Wade, and Tara came along at the end. So yes, they grew up learning how to work. Their first job was cleaning out the dishwasher. And
Cleaning out the dishwasher or doing the dishwashing? You had a dishwasher?
we
All
had
right,
a
lucky you.
dishwasher. I had to have a dishwasher. But that was their first job. But yes, we took them wherever we could. I can remember being in a tractor, driving with one hand and feeding a bottle in the
Sure.
other.
Right.
And so you made it work. You made it
Right,
work.
right. Well, I grew up on a farm myself, and I think that's where my great work ethic came from. Just, the job had to be done, and it's your turn to do it, so out the door you go. So you have a couple other pictures there with, I think, the grain bind, or shocking and all
Shocking
that.
of grain, okay.
That was time consuming.
Well, this was threshery.
Oh, that's, okay. We'll get into that in a little bit, because I know
Okay.
you were very an instigator for the threshery.
Uh-huh.
So in addition to the outdoor, the farming aspect, you also had the household to maintain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I saw some pictures there of some canned goods. I'm guessing that you had a garden, and if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
I have had a garden and I still have it. We got a lot of produce out of it, canning tomatoes and whatever. So, and it also produced corn, which every year the family got together and we harvested corn. And I believe that year was
That's a lot.
103 quarts we froze. And everybody took some and went home. So it was a lot of family time. We enjoyed doing things together. Every time we had to do things, the kids would come home and help. So we worked together.
Just thinking back to the farm days too, farmers were kind of self-sufficient. I mean, they had the milk products, and you could even make your own butter if you wanted to. You had the huge garden. You had access to the beef, if you wanted beef and or
Yes,
chicken, so
Uh-huh.
kind of self-sufficient, as long as
Right.
you had a good-sized refrigerator and freezer. And plenty of cellar space. Do you have a cellar or a basement in your
Sure
house?
sure do.
And still
Yeah.
doing some canning on occasion? or-
Canning, and the first year, I think, about 2 years after we were married, I had to get some chicks. I wanted chickens. Well, that lasted 1 year because we butchered our own, and it was a lot of
A
work.
lot of work for.
A lot of work, right.
And then you had eggs, though, too.
And
right?
then eggs, yes, yeah.
Chickens are very popular these days.
I
Everybody
know
has
they
them.
are, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
And so outside of working on the farm, working in the house and taking care of a large family, I know farmers' wives were also involved like with the school, the church, and other, maybe 4-H. Did you have any experience with that? Maybe on the church choir, things like that?
The children were in 4-H when they were younger. And we went to church every Sunday. We took the kids to church, and thank God it wasn't an 8 o'clock mass. Back then, it was a 10 o'clock mass, so getting 5 kids ready for
Yes.
church was a challenge.
Right.
And we probably were the last ones in the churchyard to make it on time. And then we always told the kids, if you behave in church, we'll go for breakfast.
Ooh, that was a real treat to go out to
Well,
eat.
I
That
didn't
was a
tell
treat.
them, I just wanted a day off of cooking breakfast.
And cleaning up. Oh, good for you. Good
yeah.
for you. Yeah, that's a good incentive. We'll behave and we'll go out for breakfast or whatever. Okay, so raising the family, working on the farm, taking care of the garden. I mean, that was busy, busy, busy. I don't imagine you had a whole lot of spare
Well-
time. When you had some spare time,
Mowing lawn, that was a 5-hour job for me.
what about sewing? I know my
And
mother
sewing.
made a lot of clothes for us
I
girls.
did. When the girls were young, I made their Easter outfits. And I can remember the night before, I was sewing on buttons or whatever, just to be ready for their Easter Sunday outfit.
And crossing our fingers that it wasn't going to snow on Easter Sunday.
Right. But I did do a lot of sewing back then. I don't know how I did it, but when I look back now, patching. There was always
Patching.
blue jeans to patch, and
Right.
so I did a lot of patching. And then I went to quilting. I made some
Oh,
quilts.
good for you.
And trying to make all the kids a quilt, and I still do that. But
Well, and you had girls, and we had girls. My mom made a lot of doll clothes. I don't know if you made
I
doll
never
clothes.
got into
Oh,
that,
okay.
no.
So-
No. My girls surprisingly didn't. They were more
They were
into
too busy.
tractors and things
Yeah.
like that.
That's okay, that's okay. And I assume they all had pets, cats and dogs
Oh,
and
yes.
everything like that. And
Uh-huh.
okay. All right, so it sounds like you had a lot of happy times, Shirley, so I'm glad to hear that. Any extra special memories? Like what, if you could recap the 60 years that you've been on the farm, what would be like the best memory that you can think of
I think
from
our
your perspective?
best memories was for family to be together.
Thanksgiving, Christmas.
We celebrate all the holidays and birthdays, and the whole family gets together, and that means a lot.
I know you have a picture there of your Christmas card with the entire family that just happened to get together. That was really nice.
Yeah, this was a time that we all got together at daughter Heidi's home in Milwaukee for one day, and those are happy times.
They are happy
They
times.
are, they are.
And your farm has hosted the Sevastopol FFA Alumni Breakfast several times, correct?
3 times.
I would guess that is a major undertaking on the owner's part to get everything ready. What does that all encompass?
It's a good time, you get things done that you put off.
Painting, sprucing up.
Right. Yeah, I have some pictures here of the dairy breakfast. There's the inside of our barn. Lots of cars.
Lots and lots of people.
And lots of people.
And the breakfast.
Yep, and the breakfast. So yes, three times we hosted it. It was great.
It is
It
great.
worked out. We enjoy it, and you meet so many people, and you're able to convey to them just what the farm is all about.
Right. Actual life on the farm
That's
where the
right.
visitors can see what goes on and all the work that is involved in that. So we thank you very much for hosting the dairy breakfast. And speaking of dairy, I know that your husband Bernie was very instrumental in developing or bringing about our Northeastern Wisconsin Antique Power Association Threshery. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, this started back in '83. He got together with a bunch of fellas to talk tractors. Well, that night he came home and he said, we join the club, the Northeastern Wisconsin Antique Power Association Club. And years before, we went to a threshery in Simcoe, Wisconsin,
I've heard of that.
every
yes.
year in the end of July. And we always enjoyed that show. So I guess at that meeting, he presented an idea, let's have a threshery. And so he said, we're going to have a threshery in August. And he says, I volunteered our farm to have the first threshery at our farm. Oh, well, that was another project.
Surprise.
So we had the first threshery, and it was a one-day affair on a Sunday, and we got rained out.
Oh, no.
So it was rescheduled for the next week, and it turned out great.
Great.
So the guys figured it went good that week. Let's have a 2-day threshery. And it went so well at your place, let's have it again there. Where I guess it was supposed to go to different club members at the time. Well, 15 years later, we had our last one at the farm. And since then, they were able to buy land about a mile as the crow flies. And we have 40 acres for holding the threshery, and I don't know how many members, but it takes a lot of members to put this
Yes,
on.
it does.
So anyway, these are some of the pictures of things. Our family kind of handles the larger machines, the threshing machine, the hay press, the shingle mill,
Right,
and the sawmill.
right.
And this was a picture of threshing, shocking oats that you use at the threshery.
Right.
So this past year, we had our 41st year of the threshery, which is great.
Right.
I'm so happy it lasted this long,
long
and
as it
it's has great interest yet. So.
And you were able to acquire your own piece of property, so that's a permanent buildings there now.
That's right.
There's a concession stand and a pavilion, you have live music in that. I think between our dairy breakfast and our threshery, if you're visiting Door County, you have to, those two events I think are two of the best events that Door County hosts.
Yes, it's
so.
unique and gives a lot of insight as to what our forefathers put forth so we could continue our farming industry.
Especially with just seeing the differences in the machinery capabilities. You know, we used to do everything by hand. Well, now it's very mechanical and digital, and technology has stepped in,
That's
so
right.
making things a little bit easier, but still You have to have hands-on and be there and monitor it all. So, well, this is, has been very interesting, Shirley. Any significant changes that you could see from when you started 60 years ago to what you're doing on the farm now? You're still out in the field, so I don't think you've had a whole lot of change at all. Good for you.
I enjoy the part of farming, I really do. You know, the machinery has changed. We started out with a 40 horsepower tractor, and now we have a 180 horse tractor.
Unbelievable.
Right. So it has changed, the machinery has changed a great deal. I still do all the field tillage and do all the chopping of haylage, and chopping the corn silage, filling a 20 by 90 foot silo. So I try to help out as much as I can on the farm, and I enjoy it.
Good for you, and I know your family, most of your family is still close to the area, except for daughter Heidi, I think. The rest of them live here, they're able to help you on the farm. It's still a family affair, which is
That's right.
great.
Our son
Wade
Wade,
is-
yes, he took over the farm in 13, and he's doing a tremendous job. And I'm there to help him as much as I can.
Good for you. Well, this has been a pleasure, again, talking to you, Shirley. And again, on behalf of the Sevastopol Historical Society, thank you, Shirley Geisel, for being with us today, and we hope to see you all on September 8th. Thank you.
Thank you.